Hi, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to continue my story about where I've been this past year. And now we're getting to the point of how I got back home and what happened after that. So after I found all of this stuff out about his father, I was horrified and I confronted Jared on it, and Jared didn't say a word. He didn't apologize, nothing. And at that point, so many lies had been built up at that point, I finally decided I'm leaving. I didn't even care if I was homeless. So that day I had his phone. He came home, and at that point, I had already been trying to contact people to ask them, can you help me? I had already contacted my best friend back home, and she said, no, sorry, you can't stay with us. I contacted an ex-boyfriend of mine who I had been talking to about this. He's just been a really good friend of mine for the past, 30 years. He was an ex-boyfriend from when I was 21. When he found out that I needed to get home and I didn't know how, he said, look, I'll help you any way I can. I can't give you a place to stay, but I can get you away back home if you want. So I called him that day and he said, find a flight, I will pay for it. I found a flight for $150 each for me and Tabin to get back. It was like a great deal. Well, by the time he actually got me the money, the flight was booked. I was like, well, I have this money. I think I'm just going to drive. I'm going to take the car. Screw Jared. I don't care if he has a car or not. There's a rail system here. I'm leaving and I'm taking this car with me. So when Jared got home that day, I told him, I'm leaving and I'm taking the car. I'm done. He didn't say a word. He didn't fight for me. He didn't say, I'm sorry. Nothing. He was just completely silent. I didn't have a phone, as I said, so I decided I was going to order a phone before I left. I need something just in case of an emergency. So I ordered the phone. It was going to take a couple days to get there, and I thought I'm going to leave the day that I get my phone. So I started packing my things, and during this time, Jared's still not making any effort. Also, we had to come to an agreement of how I was going to survive. And because he was still working this great job, we just decided that he was really going to pay for anything that was going to be happening here. He actually agreed that he would take all responsibility of any of the bills that hadn't been paid, that he would pay the car payment, and he would also pay me about $1,200 a month in child support. So we signed an agreement on that. We actually had it notarized. It was a legal separation agreement, and I needed that. And Jared was telling me, look, this isn't going to really happen. We're not going to do this. This is just a way for you to get your money. And I said the same thing. At this point, we were kind of getting along, but it was really awkward. I felt really uncomfortable around him. I felt like I didn't know this person. He was a complete stranger to me. And that was the weirdest feeling, to be living with a stranger. And he had felt like that for a really long time, but during this time was worse. It was heartbreaking. And then he was telling me and Tabin that this isn't forever, that he's going to work a couple months and he's coming back. He's going to come home for us. That's what he said. He said, I just got this promotion. I want to get this money. I want to save up money. And so I can come back out there, but also so that I can support you through all of this. I wasn't sure what to think of all of that, but I really thought that if I left, it would kick him in his ass, that he would finally see what he's doing and that it's separating us and that it's separating our family. It didn't work out that way. As I said, I didn't have anywhere to go. I was homeless. And at this point, nobody was willing to help me. Whether or not I had a place to live was not going to matter to me anymore. I was tired of living under so much lies and abuse, mental and emotional abuse that I was taking from him, and I just couldn't take it. And I just thought, I don't care, I will live in my car. I will live in that car. So I pretty much prepared myself to live in the car. The day before I left, a really good friend of mine from high school texted me in the middle of the night. It was probably 11:30 or so, and she was like, hey, if you don't have a place to stay, I have a basement that maybe you can stay in. I had no idea where she lived or, what her basement was like. And then her and I just started kind of chatting again, back and forth like we did. And we had seen each other over the years, but it hasn't been this great bonding relationship that we had. But we had a really great relationship in high school and a few years after high school. She was my best friend. So at least I knew when I was leaving, I had a place to stay. The day that I left, Jared didn't cry. He didn't ask me to stay. Nothing. the night before, he had actually cried at the restaurant that we were at, because I really wanted to make sure that Tavin had a good time with Jared and I before we left. And so we were trying to do some fun things with Tavin. We went out for pizza one night and Jared started crying at the table, and I said, you can always come home, you know. He started crying and he said, that means the world to me because that's what I want. He's like, I just really need to work and get this money. And I said, okay. So in my head, I'm really thinking, well, maybe this is kind of changing him. Maybe he's seeing how things are, you know. So I truly believe that once we left, he would finish up his job there and get the money that he needed. Jared and I were actually talking a lot on my way home. The very first day, I called him. I said, hey, well, how was work today? You know, how was getting back and forth? And he says, oh, I'm really tired. You know, I had to take the bus and the rail and blah, blah, blah. Then the next day, I didn't hear from him at all. I tried calling him. He wasn't answering. Nothing. I heard nothing from him at all. So then I got into town and I was at my friend Chris's, and it was a really nice basement. So I was really excited about that. It was a little awkward because she has two of her older daughters that live there, and I really didn't know them as adults. I knew them as kids. And, you know, Chris and I weren't really, you know, best friends at this time. So we hadn't really seen each other or talked to each other a whole lot over the last few years. So it was really awkward, but she was so... I love this woman with all of my heart. She was so accommodating and so thoughtful and so wonderful. Her house was really nice, and her daughters were nice, and her grandkids were awesome. They lived there, and that was a great thing for Tavin. And that weekend, I tried calling Jared, and he wasn't answering. And then a friend of mine contacted me on Facebook, and she said, is Jared in Utah? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I left him, he's in Phoenix. I have no idea. She says, oh, I just saw a thing that said, you know, the nearby friends, you know, where are your friends? She had said that she saw he was in Utah. Sure enough, I checked Facebook and it said that he was in Provo, Utah, and I lost it. So I called him. It was on that Saturday that I got there, and I called him and I asked him, where are you? He said, I'm in Utah. I said, what for? He said, I'm there for General Conference. Actually, it was a Sunday, because I had asked him, well, are you going to work tomorrow, right? He said, yeah. Well, this was later in the afternoon. It's like a 5-6 hour drive from where he was in Utah to Phoenix. And I said, well, how are you going to get there? You know, I'm like, it's late. Like, I don't understand, because he was talking about staying there and visiting with his family, blah, blah, blah. And I finally said, you moved there, didn't you? No, I'm here for General Conference. I mean, he was just lying to me, like just flat out lying to me. And finally I said, well, I'll call your job tomorrow and I'll find out if you're still working there. Long story short, he quit his job and moved to Utah the day I left. His father was posting things on Facebook. I was blocked from him, so I didn't know, but my best friend did. She was still friends with Jared's dad and Jared, and saw that Jared's dad had posted, yay, Jared will be here on Thursday. I left on Wednesday. That was heartbreaking. He quit his job. So at that point, I had no money. He was looking for a way for me to leave so that he could go to Utah. I really don't even want to talk about the rest of all the things that happened while I was living at my friend's house. I will tell you one thing. That leaving Jared was the best thing I ever did and the worst thing I ever did. One of the best things in the world came out of it. I made such a great connection with my friend Chris. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful friendship that grew. I'm just forever grateful for her. She was the only one who stepped up to the plate, and she didn't have to. She's got a full house. She had her 2 adult children living there and 3 of her grandkids living there. You add in the mix, there's me and now Tavin. But I'll tell you something. When summer hit, her and I had the best summer of my life, of my adult life. Like, it was the best time I ever had. I'm so grateful for her. And she is my best friend in the whole wide world. She is my soul sister. Her and I just bonded so deeply. It was the most beautiful thing that could have come out of such a messy, horrible situation. And I'm forever grateful to her. That's not the end of the story, though. Eventually, Jared started realizing what he had done wrong. He started realizing what his father was really doing. In the process of all of this, when I left Arizona, the day I found all this stuff out and I realized I'm really leaving, I called my father to tell him that I was leaving and I wanted to go see him and say goodbye. Instead, when I called my father, he said, "We have to move to Michigan." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, Sharon has Parkinson's." And I didn't know that. Nobody told me. I knew she was getting tested for it, but nobody told me. And he says, "And you just won't help us, so I have to move to Michigan now. I don't want to leave here, and it's all your fault." He's like literally berating me. Him having to move to Michigan was my fault because I just didn't keep my promise in helping him. At this point, I'm crying because he's making me feel bad, but I'm also realizing I have to leave my husband, and that's scary enough. And so I finally said, Dad, I'm willing to stay here, but I can't live in your complex because it's 55 plus, no children. You would have to get a different place. But I'm willing to stay here and help you with whatever you need. And I'm crying because I don't want to stay there. He hung up on me. That's the last time I talked to my father. Several months later, I noticed on my dad's Facebook page that he wrote, "The greatest lie Tristine ever told was that she would come out here and help us. And she just disappeared out of nowhere." So of course, everybody starts ragging on me. All these comments are, she's a liar, what a spoiled brat, what a bitch, all these terrible things, but yet that's what my dad does. It feels sorry for me, and everybody look at her, what a horrible person she is. Little did anybody know that I called him the day that I left. I told him I was going home. I told him I was going to Wisconsin. I offered to stay there to help. So through all of that, I was also going through this thing with my father. And the very same day, like, just that I'm leaving my husband and I'm finding all this stuff out about my husband. And it's like, it was just one thing after another. As I was saying, Jared starting to realize what his father was doing. He starts to see that his father had really been manipulating him and lying to him and really making an effort to break up our marriage. Now, it bothers me that Jared didn't see this, from the get-go, because I knew it was happening before we even moved. I knew that they were talking. I didn't know how in-depth it was. I didn't really know at great lengths of the things they were talking about. I just didn't realize the extent of it in Arizona. I just didn't realize the extent of how his father had convinced him that I was abusive to Jared. So Jared started telling everybody that I was mentally and emotionally abusive to him. Jared decided he was coming back home. I had been talking to the bishop here for his church at the Mormon church, and his bishop was kind of helpful to me in many, many ways, financially, food-wise. When Jared decided he was coming back, I said, you're not coming back here unless you get help. And so before he moved back here, we decided to have counseling with his bishop here in town. And so we were doing these phone conversations and these phone counseling sessions, and I was still really leery. We were all kind of trying to help Jared get back here and get an apartment, and there was an apartment that was literally around the corner from my friend Chris's house. And I thought, this is a perfect place because Tavin can go visit him and I can just watch him walk around the corner. I wasn't excited about him coming home. I had no intention of getting back with him whatsoever. So when he came back, his apartment wasn't ready, and so his church put him up in a hotel, and Tavin and I spent some time with him. Jared and I had a really in-depth conversation for a really long time, for hours. He seemed like the husband I had before all of this started 2.5 years ago. But I was still really leery, and I was still so hurt and just couldn't get over it. So then he got his apartment. It was a super, super cute apartment, and I was really excited for him. And Tavin then started spending pretty much all of his time over here and didn't want to come back to Chris's, and that kind of hurt me. Now, some things were going on at Chris's that I don't really want to get too much into, but it was pertaining to her friends and one of her daughters. On Chris's birthday party, I threw her a 50th surprise birthday party. That's kind of when I noticed her daughter and one of her friends were really dissing me. Like, they were just so rude to me and disrespectful to me. I was a little uncomfortable about it, on her birthday, but I really wanted to focus on Chris, and I really wanted to focus on her birthday that day and all the fun that I had planned for her, but they pretty much ruined her birthday party because all the things that I had planned, they all pretty much abandoned me and Chris and just a couple of our neighbors down in the basement while everybody else was upstairs. I would say, come on down, we're gonna play games. Nope, nobody would come down. Come on down, we're gonna eat. Nope. It was so rude and so disrespectful. And I kind of had a feeling something was going on, and I didn't know what. I was so pissed. I just really felt like my time was up there and that I really needed to reconnect with Jared and be with Tavin because he was here with Jared a lot. I felt it was important for me to at least try, at least for Tavin's sake. So I moved in with Jared. And I did not stop my connection with Chris. I felt it was really important for me to keep that relationship strong and going. And so whatever I had with her and the things that we were doing, I never stopped. And I told Jared, that is not going to stop. My friendship with Chris is much more important than you at this moment. And I made that very clear to him, that he was very low on the totem pole in my life at that point. And he totally understood, and he supported me in that. We've been back together since September, and it's now, of course, March. We've had ups and downs. He's in counseling. We've had moments. It's just pain that I feel, and resentment and anger and unforgiveness. I have a really hard time forgetting how he just abandoned us and how he left us homeless, and he left us starving. At one point, we had no food. He got our car repossessed because he didn't make the payments on it and didn't tell me that it was happening. So many things that he did while he was in Utah were awful. They were god-awful. They were unforgivable. But yet I'm here, and I'm trying to fight for my family, and Jared is too. There are moments when I start to feel vulnerable, and I'll let my guard down with him, and I get mad at myself. And I find myself just getting angry with him and just feeling like, what am I doing here? Why am I with this person? He knows that, so I'm not afraid to say it here. He knows how I feel. I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to find my footing in this marriage. Some days I feel like I love him, and other days, most days, I hate him. That's pretty much where I've been. That's pretty much what has been happening to me and what I've been going through. I'm happy to be home. I am so stinking happy to be back in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Like, the thrill of my life. Like, we had a great winter. I was excited for snow. I was excited for winter. I got a great new winter jacket. Like, I made the best out of every freaking day here. From the moment I stepped foot in Kenosha, I have not regretted one day being back home. And I don't regret leaving Jared at all. And I am so grateful that out of all the friends who offered me and Tavin a place to stay, it was Chris. I'm so happy it was her. She's my sister. She is my life. And I will never, ever put my husband ahead of her again. At least not at this point in my life. No one will take that place of her in my life, and I'm just forever grateful for her. I love you, Chris. That's where I've been. That's what's happened to me this past year. There have been some people that have reached out to me through the YouTube world and said, how you doing? And sent me love, and I just want to send it back to you and say thank you for all your support. I'm going to try to get back on here and do some cool stuff. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do besides, the audiobook. I'm really excited about that. It should be out really soon. Just the first few chapters. It's been really hard because we're homeschooling, we're quarantined, just like everybody else. But trying to make the best of it. Nothing's changed for us because this is normal life for us, but it's just trying to get that quiet time to do it and getting my software back and, you know, buying new software because I haven't done any editing or videos lately. So thank you for listening and joining me on this adventure. And I hope that you'll stick around and find out all the cool things that we're going to be doing here, especially being Chris this summer. We're going to have such a great summer, better than last year. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, to click the bell. Don't comment anything mean because it'll be deleted. But God bless you. Take care.
2 hours later, you know what I was found. Smoking in the boys' room. Smoking in the boys' room. Please don't you feel me up to rule. Everybody ready and smoking loud and cool. Smoking in the boys' room. 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 Don't you feel me? Up with your rule. Everybody knows that smoking loud is cool. One more.